What's going on, Lions fans? Welcome to the Pride of Detroit YouTube channel. My name is Miko, joined once again by my guy, Morgan Cannon, one of the writers over at prideofdetroit.com. And this is your go-to place for all things Lions related. That includes news, updates, analysis, and so much more. Morgan, we are officially in the thick of it when it comes down to Combine Week. Today was the first rounds of a media availability down in Indianapolis. And this is where we got to hear from a number of GMs, head coaches, and this is where we kind of got some really big news today coming out of Indy in regards to a pretty big topic that we had been, kind of harping on the last couple of weeks, which is the Cleveland Browns and their stance on trading Myles Garrett, but also what that kind of means for the Lions in their pursuit of adding more elite pass rushing to this roster. So first and foremost, GM Andrew Berry got to meet with the media down there in Indianapolis, and he kind of had some interesting things to say in regards to Myles Garrett, right?
Yeah, and if you guys aren't, familiar with, the website at prideofdetroit.com, we always cover everything super in depth, but it's going to be extra this year because for the first time, our own Jeremy Reisman is in Indianapolis. Eric's here, Metro Detroit. So yeah, definitely be plugged into the website if you're looking to stay in tune with everything Combine related. But yeah, man, Andrew Berry came out with what we thought he was going to say, right, Miko?
Yeah.
I'm not doing this because y'all already know the position I'm in. So they asked him about it. Obviously, I think several of his questions, he probably knew it was coming though. Several of his questions were related to Myles Garrett. And Berry said, our stance really has not changed. We can't imagine a situation where not having Myles as part of this organization is best for the Browns. So yeah, you know what I mean?
That I was gonna say that last part is kind of what's key, right? Where what's best for the Browns. And that's very true. You have one of the best pass rushers in the NFL right now, a generational talent, and you're in cap hell, right? So even if you did want to trade him, you're not in a position where trading him is still beneficial for your organization. And we've talked about this before, Morgan. That's a weird place to be in because obviously a player like Myles Garrett would fetch you a king's ransom, but they just can't afford it financially.
Yeah, I just don't see it, right? We've beat this over the head, guys. If you're looking for the more in depth about the Garrett cap situation, we've done a video on that. We'll link it below. But yeah, there's not really a lot of incentive for Cleveland. And right, I haven't vetted the validity of the Stafford rumors. Are the Browns interested? I don't know how that would happen because we already know about the Watson deal too. If you're watching this channel, you probably know that.
Yep.
Browns fully guaranteed Watson's contract back when they made that deal with the devil. And they're kind of laying in bed with it now. I do think, I've said that before, if they didn't do the Watson thing and they weren't up to their neck in that crap, then it'd be a lot easier, in my opinion, to maybe do we could get a whole bunch from Myles here and we'll just eat 15 million one year, 16 million if they want to defer it, make it post June 1. But just everything pulled into it, I don't think they're in a spot where it makes sense, right? Unless it's some sort of Godfather offer. So yeah, it was interesting to hear Brad's comments on it too, right, Miko? He was just listen here.
Yeah,
now.
because we said, with Myles Garrett potentially wanting to be traded, one of the teams that's been talked about a lot is the Detroit Lions as a ideal landing spot. So of course, much like how Andrew Berry's being asked about the possibility of trading Myles Garrett, Brad Holmes faced a number of questions about trading for just another elite pass rusher. And I thought he made a number of really good points, Morgan, when meeting with the media, specifically when he was asked about just what it would mean to add, another elite pass rusher to this team. He said, and I quote, "Would we want to add another one? Yes, but we'd like to have 3 or 4 high-end rushers. But that's not always the reality of what you're able to do. It's definitely not being ignored." And I think that's a really key thing because I think there's this thought process that the Lions have not been giving the proper attention, right, to, whether it's the defensive tackle position or just, finding another edge rusher. And you and I talked about this a couple weeks ago. When you look at Brad Holmes' tenure as the GM for the Detroit Lions, they have gone out and tried to bring in help in the trenches defensively every single offseason that he's been here.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's this misnomer that the Lions haven't really devoted assets to the defensive front, man. And that is just not true. You know what I mean? Just rolling back, you got Levi in the first draft, Aleem in the first draft. They drafted Josh Pascal in the second round after they selected Aiden Hutchinson second overall. They traded for Zadarius Smith. And Brad's point too, I'm going to paraphrase here. There's, elite edge rushers don't grow on trees here. You know what I mean? Like if we're playing like who are the elite of the elite, there's less than 10, in my opinion. That's an exercise we could do in the offseason, like tier edge rushers, because I think that'd be a worthy conversation. Boom, a little light bulb goes off here live and while we're making a video, guys.
I'm with you.
Yeah, but there's just not that many of them. It's like the NBA conversation, right? Like, oh, the Pistons, it'll be happening this offseason. The Pistons really need to add somebody next to Cade because of the season they're having. It's tough to get them folks, people. There's just only so many of them on the planet at one time. And I think that's like they've devoted assets to the front. I'm saying all this to say they really have. A lot of them got hurt last year. Levi's been hurt up until this season. So just the dominoes just didn't. And for a while, I want to make this point again, too. The defense was playing its butt off. Even post Hutchinson injury was beating people to sleep. But that last round, losing Aleem was huge for this defense. I don't think people really I know folks know Aleem McNeil's a really good player, but with no Hutchinson and, you're patchworking the front together, losing Aleem was huge, right, Miko? That was a huge domino. People
yeah, and I think that's the thing that people just again don't quite realize. They look at the fact that the Lions had such a patchwork defensive line near the end of the season, but it's you realize how much injury you had to sustain to get to that point. You lost John Kaminsky before the season even started. You lost Kyle Pecco, I believe, in week 1 or right before week 1. You lose Marcus Davenport, you lose Aiden Hutchinson, you lose Aleem McNeil, you lose Derek Barnes. You lost the depth as well. You didn't just lose starters, you lost your depth as well, so
Kaminsky.
that you had to go to your third and fourth string, defensive linemen and really trying to make things happen. Going back to what you were saying before too about, again, being able to find that talent, whether it's via trade, whether it's free agency, isn't easy. And Brad Holmes talked about that as well when he said the following, those guys are hard to acquire and it's hard to keep them financially. And then he starts talking about Aiden Hutchinson in this regard, where he says, again, we have one that's due an extension and we've already kind of gotten to the planning stages about him already. When you talk about adding another one, it's can you financially add another one? Because you want to add another one on top of everything else that you have, and that's what makes it tough. So again, Brad's not shying away from the fact that the Lions want to add pass rusher help. They're very well aware of what they need. But when people start talking about elite pass rushers and they're talking about whether it's trading for a Myles Garrett or trading for a Max Crosby, I'm going to say it right now, Morgan, and it might piss some people off. When it comes down to signing possibly a Josh Sweat or Khalil Mack, those guys don't just come cheap, right? No one's just willing to sign with your team on the low. Some of these guys are still looking to get paid, and being able to add that to your roster, to add that to your salary cap, in addition to what Brad's saying, you have all these other pieces that need to be taken care of. That's where things get difficult.
Yeah, and that's why I think where Holmes is coming from when he makes all these comments, right? And it's gonna tick some people off. And to be clear here, folks, Miko and I aren't saying hey, the Lions don't need help on the defensive line. I've seen people comment oh, we're just going to be supposed to be good with Josh Paschal opposite Hutchinson. No, man. We want Paschal to be in the rotation. I don't want him starting next year, to be clear. But that's where the draft comes in. You could draft 2 of your top 3 draft picks on the defensive line. People are talking up and down about how deep this draft is on the defensive line, particularly defensive tackle. So shoot, that would help a lot, And to your point, I think Josh Sweat's coming off as his rookie deal. So yeah, that man's going to be ready to cash in. It's that time, baby. This is why you hoop during the season, is because so you can hit free agency if you don't get extended, because it's going to create a bidding war. And yeah, is Detroit a more attractive place than it was 5-6 years ago? No doubt, but not to the extent teams are going to take significantly less money to play here, or players, excuse me, unless you're in a really specific situation, you're old and you just kind of want a chance at a ring type deal. But not for a guy like Josh Sweat, right, Miko? He's going to be ready to – he's going to tell a team to back up the Brinks truck, man. I need that dough.
The dude just won a Super Bowl. He's going to want to be paid like one of the top edge rushers, or at least again for his age and where he is in his career. He's trying to cash in now.
It's the big one. Yep.
And
The
it's one
big
of the
payday.
reasons why, again, and it frustrates people. And I understand if it frustrates you as a fan, I get it. I'm not telling you that it's not frustrating, but it's why Brad Holmes is going to the well and he's looking at players that have maybe had a little bit of an injury history, but have at least have shown potential, because you're bargain bin hunting, because you still know that you have to pay Aiden Hutchinson, because you have to pay Kirby Joseph, because you're gonna have to pay Jamison Williams. And like Brad talked about in this press conference, you get to the point where like you understand that you're not going to be able to pay everyone, but you're at least trying to keep that young core together as long as you can before the pressure really starts to mount. And so you're still drafting. That's why the draft will continue to be, you know, at the forefront of, I think, of what the Lions do when it comes down to adding depth and adding talent to this roster. It's cheap talent. It's cheap young talent. And again, we're just going to have to continue to trust that Brad is going to prioritize things correctly. Like he said, it's not that it's never been a priority, and Morgan just laid out all of the defensive, line help that they've brought in over the years. They've always been looking to add talent there. It's just a matter of going into this draft. Do they decide to stay pat at 28 and draft whatever pass rusher comes to them? Do they decide to go on the offensive line? Hell, does Brad get super aggressive and say, you know what? No, we truly do need like a premier, pass rusher that we can develop alongside Aiden, and they trade up. There's so many things on the table, but I think the thing that I really got Morgan out of his press conference today is that it doesn't have to come via trade. It doesn't have to come from giving away another big contract to an incoming free agent. Like, let's pay our guys first and foremost. Let's take care of the guys that have performed for us year in and year out, and let's continue to see where we can find talent, whether it's again on the cheaper side of free agency, again, being willing to spend when necessary, but at the end of the day, still going out and drafting quality talent.
Yeah, no doubt. And that's where I think this all points back to. Like, they're going to continue to prioritize, like you said, Miko, bringing back the people that they know have performed in their program and they drafted, and then make it fit. Like, I expect them to go there. Holmes, his MO has always been to go into the draft with no like big old needs, right? So then he can do as he pleases. With that said, I wouldn't be surprised if it's like a double dipping on either side of the line of scrimmage. Okay, like 2 offensive linemen, 2 defensive linemen, just replenish the ranks in the trenches, because you got some older players. You have some, obviously you need some more depth, but at the same time, like, if Hutch comes back and he can, get even nearish that clip he was playing at last year to begin the season, you're going to be up and away. And then you get a Lee McNeil back. And yeah, we're not saying here that there's not a need. Just, I'm right there with you, Miko. I just think a trade is just, it would cost too much. And to Miko's point, like moving up, like to move up from like 28 to like 19, we're not talking multiple day ones, like multiple first round picks. You're talking like a third and maybe like a fifth or a sixth. You know what I mean? Like much more,
Exactly.
much more affordable, and something that's not gonna, deplete you of your ability to, have cheap young talent in the future. Because you just named a bunch of players, Miko, and think about that, folks. I know we talk about the cap here a lot, but that's a lot of young talent that's going to get paid, and they want to keep them. I really do. I think they're going to try to keep Jamison, like when it's all said and done, especially if he turns in a full year of what he was doing last year for 2025. You're going to want to keep him, because this offense is going to be historical. So yeah, I'm right there with you, man. I do think it's always going to be the priority, keeping the in-house talent, and then just being smart and fiscally responsible everywhere else.
Yeah, exactly. And so when it comes down to again what we think the Lions are going to end up doing, I think like we have the combine this week, and I think that's where Thursday is the day for defensive linemen and linebackers. It's a really good day to tune into the combine, right? If you're not someone that typically watch, just get familiar with some guys, because like Morgan said, there's so many pass rushers and defensive tackles and things of that nature in this draft. The Lions could potentially double dip in that pool of players. And then after that, like you said, Brad Holmes typically tries to go into the draft with no like clear needs, and that's when we get to dive into free agency and see what's available, not just at the top of the free agency market, but again, looking and finding those bargain bin players that could really fit into what the Lions actually need.
Yeah. And they can make a run at it too, like one of these, like maybe not like a Josh Sweat, but like a tier under. I still need to dive into the free agents more. We've been pretty deep into the draft prep. If you are looking for more, hit up Eric's site, DetroitLionsBreakdown.com. His Patreon is crazy if you're a draft nut. If you watch these videos and you're a draft nut, you could have that spreadsheet open and you're like, oh yeah, here's 15 defensive tackles. That thing is comprehensive. So something to keep in mind as we get closer to April. But yeah, free agency is going to it's going to calm a lot of people down, I think, because he does this every year, right? Like going
Yeah.
into free agency last year when he added Zeitler, and he was just, plugging things in here and there. And people were like, oh, okay, now we're good. He can take whatever. So I think that's what we're going to end up having. Like when they took, they traded for Carlton, got a Meek, signed a Meek, we were like, oh, dang. Then
Like, oh,
drafted
they must be set at corner. And then they went out and
drafted
drafted
two.
Terrion and Ennis.
First two picks,
Right.
exactly. I really do. I think that's what's going to end up happening this year as well, because that's how Brad likes to operate. Because then you're not hamstrung. I really like this receiver, and he could be really good for us, but I kind of got to take a tackle because I didn't do anything in March. You know what I mean? So
yeah. So I think it's something that, like, again, we're very curious to hear what you guys think as well
Sure.
in regards to Brad Holmes' comments about, them kind of being out on trading for elite pass rushers. Do you think this is a smart move? Is this something that you agree with? Or do you think the Lions should still be at least, poking around and trying to find a trade partner? Like Morgan said, we do have Jeremy Reisman down over at the Combine this year. So definitely check out, PrideOfDetroit.com, being able to stay locked in with all of the new articles that are going to be coming up, because again, Jeremy's going to be having a lot more access than we typically do to the Combine. So it's going to be interesting to see, what he comes away, impressed with. Hopefully we can even like maybe get him for a video over here on the YouTube channel. It's the
Definitely.
offseason. He's not nearly as busy as he normally is.
He'll do it if he comes back and he's able to take a couple naps. He's old like us, so he wants to. I'm excited for him though. He wasn't super pumped about having to mingle and stuff, but I think he'll get in his rhythm and he'll be good doing it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think he'll have a good time. I wish I had known ahead of time. I'd have asked to go.
For real. Good food too. Everyone always talks about that St. Elmo place. I've never been to Indianapolis, but he likes shrimp.
We'll see. But yeah, guys, if you're looking for any more additional Lions content, make sure to check out the Pride of Detroit website. Also, if you're looking to stay tuned to any of the video content we're doing over here or any of the live streams that we typically have, all you have to do is hit the subscribe button, hit the notification bell. That helps out the YouTube channel immensely. And it also makes it easier for you to find our content when we decide to upload new content as well. So with all that said, I'm Miko. He's Morgan. Thank you guys for taking the time to watch, and we'll catch you guys in the next one.